When Matt Rhule was hired by Nebraska, he made it a point of emphasis to rebuild the offensive side of the football. Ever since then, we've seen a mixture of results. So in today's video, I'm going to dive deep into the biggest question mark on the Huskers roster going into 2024, the tight end room. I'm going to talk about my concern, optimism, silver lining, and everything else in between, diving deep into every single player and their storyline. So really quick, we have a jam-packed episode today. Make sure to hit that like button if you enjoy the content. And hey, hit that subscribe button if you don't want to miss out on daily Nebraska football content this summer. We're on the road to 4,000 subscribers, so please help me hit it by the season. But without further ado, let's jump right into it, talking about Nebraska and their tight ends and what a question mark this is. When Matt Rhule got hired by the Huskers, he talked about what a staple the tight ends would be in his program, that there was always going to be two of them on the field, that they were going to be used at the wide receiver spot, as at a flex spot. They would potentially even get in the running game. And that has been held true, but there's some question marks around the depth, around the talent, and everything else in between. So let's just start it off with the starting tight end for Nebraska going into 2024, undisputed. This is Thomas Fidone. Now, man, his career has been a roller coaster to say the least. We're talking about a player who was a borderline 5-star in the class of 2021, and ever since then, he's been hit by the injury bug. He tore his ACL his first year on campus. Second year on campus, he tore his other ACL, and then last year in his junior campaign, finally stayed healthy and had about 200 yards. So again, Fidone, very talented guy. Obviously, we saw that in high school, but who would have thought in going into his senior year that he would still be on that breakout candidate list because of the fact that we've really never seen him play at an elite level. So let's talk about Thomas Fidone a little bit. Last year, again, he had 260 yards officially with 8 starts. Again, that's decent. That's nothing you're going to write home about. He played really well, and Heinrich Harburg was at quarterback. Again, we know the connection. They were both in the class of 2021, but is he legit or not? That's what the question is going to be going into this year. It's a prove-it year for Thomas Fidone. Again, the whole storyline for him, again, he's a guy who's very confident in himself. That's no knock on him, but he was a guy who, I remember when he committed to Nebraska, he said he's going to be entering the draft in 2024. Well, the draft in 2024 came and went, and again, that's not his fault when it comes to injuries, but I'm assuming he wants to go in the NFL after this year. Prove it. You have got to have a big season. We're talking 600, 700 yards for Nebraska. And one of the things that I'm concerned about when it comes to Thomas Fidone is that we know how good he is in the receiving game. I trust his hands. I trust his route running. I trust his ability to get open. I'm worried about his blocking, and that's always been the case with Fidone, even out of high school, is that I just don't believe when push comes to shove, he's a very physical tight end, that he's willing to block those top-tier edge rushers, those top-tier tight ends in the running game. So I want to see that improve when it comes to Thomas Fidone. That's his biggest question mark. But the second thing I want to see out of him this year is I want to see him be a safety valve for Dylan Raiola. When Dylan Raiola is scrambling and he can't find a man, Thomas Fidone is your guy. You've got to fire it to him because that's what tight ends are for young quarterbacks. They've got to be that safety valve. They've got to be that guy you can trust. So hopefully they build that repertoire. They build that connection. And then the last thing when it comes to Fidone, stay healthy. Please stay healthy. We can't do the song and dance again where you're injuring your lower body, where you're injuring anywhere, and you lose, a couple weeks of the season, you're out. We can't do that. Fidone, you got to play the entire season. But, I feel good about him going into this year, but I don't think he's going to be anything special. I don't think he's going to have 600, 700 yards. I don't think he's going to be an NFL draft pick. I think he's probably going to be around that 400-yard marker, unfortunately, just because of the fact that I think his career's been hampered so badly by injuries. So that's Thomas Fidone. Let's get into Nate Boerkircher, the tight end 2 for Nebraska. Now, Nate, honestly, I've seen a lot of him over the last 2 years, and every single time I've come away just a little bit unimpressed, right? He's a great blocking tight end. Really good blocking tight end. I will give him credit. One of the best blocking tight ends in the Big Ten. But when it comes to him in the receiving game, again, he's nothing special. He had 51 yards last year on 5 catches. And again, one thing that I saw in the spring game specifically is that he is very slow. Nate Boerkircher, he'll catch a football and he'll get drugged down by a linebacker in about 2 seconds. So again, Nate Boerkircher, you love him in the blocking department. There's another walk-on by the name of Luke Lindenmeyer, who's another great blocker, but Man, I mean, I want him to be more than that. I want him to be a receiving threat. I want him to develop to be a guy you feel comfortable rolling out there on third downs and can potentially get a big conversion for Nebraska. So hopefully he can develop. He's going into his, I believe, 5th year with the Huskers. So we'll see what happens there with Nate Boerkircher. But man, again, the depth for this tight end room is scary, and I'm going to talk about it more right here with Carter Nelson. So Carter Nelson, man, one of the more hyped up Nebraska tight ends in a very long time. Obviously, true freshman, 4-star guy, top 100 prospect. But there's another big question mark around him. Again, we know how talented he is. He played 8-man football. He did it all for that team. He played quarterback, running back, wide receiver. He played linebacker, right? So, again, super talented. Everybody in the country wanted him out of high school. But I have 3 concerns when it comes to Carter Nelson. Number one, he was not an early enrollee. Okay, in order to play as a true freshman, it is so important that you enroll in December so you can be around the team, you can get conditioning, you can practice with them in the spring, you can play in that spring game, you can learn the playbook. The fact that he didn't early enroll, that's not going to mean good things. We want him to get on the field in the fall. Now, number 2, he's just not big enough. I've talked about this in the past. Carter Nelson is listed at about, I'd say, 210, 215. You need him to get up to like about 240 in order to be a traditional Big Ten tight end. He is 20 pounds away from that. He will not even be close to that by the time the fall season gets here. So for that reason, I don't think he's going to play traditional tight end for Nebraska. I think if Nebraska was actually going to put him in the game, he'd probably be wide receiver. He'd be a flex wide receiver tight end. Yeah, you just can't play traditional tight end because in order to do that, you've got to block. He's not big enough to block. And the number 3 reason why I'm concerned is that he's not used to 12-man football, or 11-man football. Okay, he played 8-man football in high school. Okay, it is a big transition to get used to 3 more players on the field. Again, the fact that he didn't enroll early, the fact that he's going into his true freshman campaign, I don't expect him to get accustomed to that right away. A lot of times when it comes to 8-man players, we see a lot of studs and we see a lot of duds. We've seen a lot of duds recently. Hopefully Carter Nelson isn't one of them. So for that reason, I don't think Carter Nelson plays as a true freshman. I think it's going to be an uphill battle for him to get on the field. We could see him on the field later down the line, maybe in the final 4 games of the year, but I don't think we're going to see him early in the season. So again, this depth, very questionable for Nebraska. Some other guys in this room, we have Ismail Smith-Flores going into his 2nd year. I believe he is a redshirt freshman. A very similar case to Carter Nelson, right? Good vertical threat. You feel good about him catching the football, but he's not big enough. He's around 225, 230. You'd want him to get around 240. Yeah, I mean, you just got to put more weight on him. If he's going to get on the field, it's going to be as a flex wide receiver. Again, not necessarily a hand in the dirt tight end that you feel comfortable putting on the goal line, right? So Ismail Smith-Flores, another guy to keep your eye on, though. Again, you feel good about him in the passing game. He's definitely going to play this year. And then after that, it's a bunch of true freshmen, folks. We have Eric Ingerson, Keelan Smith, Ian Flint. All those guys, I would be super surprised if they play this year. They're just not ready to go, right? So listen, here's the bottom line when it comes to the tight end room. This depth is scary. Very, very scary for Nebraska. Thomas Fidone needs to have a breakout year in order for this to be a top unit in the Big Ten. That's a non-negotiable. We're hoping he does. It's disappointing that we've gotten to year 4 in Thomas Fidone's career and we're still waiting for him to break out, because that's been the narrative for 4 years now, that he's going to break out, and we're still waiting on it. I'm hoping it is this year. I'm praying it is. We'll see. But other than that, it's a super young year, or a super young unit. I feel really good about the tight ends, maybe 2-3 years down the line, just not right now. And for that reason, I unfortunately have to give it a grade of D+. Listen, that's a harsh grade. But this is the worst unit on Nebraska's football team. There's just not much depth here. There's not much talent. It's very young. You're relying on one player. So hopefully it can come up clutch. Again, this is a big storyline for Nebraska. It's got to stay healthy. Thomas Fidone's got to stay healthy, or else we're in a bad spot. So let me know down in the comment section below. What are you feeling about this tight end room? Are you optimistic? Are you concerned? Again, let me know that down below. And hey, if you made this far of the video, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe. And as always, folks, go Big Red, go Matt Rhule, and see you in the next one.